Go.
Hey, welcome back to another podcast here today. Today's topic is going to be one that you want to stick in and maybe share with others as well. It is about the pandemic. It's about COVID-19, and I'm joined today by one of Cottonwood's best, one of our members, been a member here with us, Dr. Blake Jenkins, since 2002. And Blake went to Baylor University, then University of North Texas Health Science Center, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Then you did your residency back at Baylor, right?
Correct. Baylor and Garland.
Baylor Garland,
Uh-huh.
and you were chief resident,
I
right?
was. Mhm.
That's awesome. And now you have your own practice. You had been in family health care for a long time, still in
Yep.
that, but your current concierge is a little different. So tell us quickly about that, Blake.
So it's a little bit different. We've been in the practice for almost a year and a half now. The practice is set up with a fraction of the number of patients. So we're limited to about 500 patients in our practice. We see a smaller number of patients a day, so we can spend 30 minutes or an hour with them, spend a lot of time on the phone with patients, specialists coordinating care, things like that. Allows us to really give a much more, personal, individualized plan of care for a patient and really focus on them a little bit more. Right. All of our patients have our phone numbers and stuff, so when they need us, they just call us directly.
Yeah,
So.
I thought that was interesting when you were telling me about it a couple of years ago when you were moving this way about, just your heart's desire to spend more time with your patients.
Absolutely. I mean, I got into family medicine because I like to know my patients, and we just got to the point where we working crazy and never feeling like you really taking care of people.
Right. What else do you want to know about you before we talk pandemic?
Well, I mean, like I said, we've been at Cottonwood for 18 years. Yeah. My wife and I, we have 3 kids and graduated 2 of them. One of them's at Baylor now, and then we have a son in 5th grade.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as we move into this topic, obviously it's one that is at the forefront of all of our minds, and I've talked to you several times in the last year about this, just to kind of get your take on it. Right now, we're in a place of the vaccines being rolled out, 2 that are already online and being given out. We've got a couple of more that are coming. But so as we move towards the pandemic, kind of talk to us. We see different, infection rates now. We see mortality rates, different things. Kind of give us a glimpse or maybe the hope that we're seeing now. What are the current infection rates? What's the, what does it look like this virus is doing?
Sure. Well, it looks like the virus is slowing down some. Across Texas, we've seen a decline in the number of cases as well as the fatalities. We've seen similar across the United States, and to a lesser degree across the world, some too, it looks like, with the data that we're seeing out of Johns Hopkins. And it looks like from last week to the week before, the week-to-week case numbers were down about 25%.
That's good.
So that's certainly encouraging.
Yeah.
I don't think we should all, run out and expose ourselves just yet.
Right.
But it's certainly encouraging we're moving in the right direction.
Right. Vaccines. That's I get a lot of conversation, a lot of questions, even email questions about, hey, Pastor, what do you think about the current vaccine? Should we take the vaccines? And we know there's some differences in the vaccines. So kind of give us a quick picture. Right now, I know we have Pfizer and Moderna that are out. You've got Johnson & Johnson, the seeking approval. First of all, talk about the 2 that are out, and they're really unique in the way these vaccines were produced. So
Sure.
Tell everybody a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, first of all, I do favor vaccination.
Right.
I think it's our best way of trying to get on top of this and getting the immunity across the population to help suppress the virus. The 2 that are available right now, Pfizer, BioNTech, and then the Moderna vaccine, they're newer vaccinations in the sense in how they work. Both of them are mRNA vaccines. mRNA technology has been around for a number of years now. These are the first 2 that we've used to make a vaccine with this technology. So it works by basically introducing a little bit of DNA material into the cell, which doesn't go into the nucleus of the cell. So for people that are concerned that it's going to alter their DNA, it doesn't have anything to do with your DNA. The code that it puts in there is a protein code, and so it causes the cell to make the spike protein, like everybody's heard about, that's on the coronavirus, and then your body can react to that protein, and that's how you build immunity. So then if you get exposed to the virus, it can attack the virus and help your body fight it off.
Sure. Now, you mentioned that it's kind of made differently. It's almost synthetic, right?
All the vaccines are synthetic nowadays. We don't really use like live virus vaccines or inactivated virus vaccines like we used to.
Okay.
So you can almost say that they're all synthetic in that sense.
Right.
It's definitely a newer technology, but they're very effective.
Okay.
You're looking at about a 95% efficacy after the second dose with both of those vaccines.
With both of those.
Yeah.
For those and some of the questions I get, and I hear people talking about since they're new, technology's not new, but these are different vaccines than we've ever had before. They're concerned about taking those.
Sure.
Give me just now your personal opinion. What's your personal opinion on whether you personally would take either one of those first two vaccines?
So I took the Moderna one.
Okay.
I've had both doses,
Okay.
and
you seem to be doing fine.
I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
I'm a couple weeks out from my second dose, and
Okay.
I did have some side effects with the second dose and felt kind of crummy for about 24 hours. That's very common to have with especially a highly effective vaccine where you can feel that immune response as your body's kicking in against it. So that most people will have some degree of symptoms with it, but they're really effective after that second dose.
Yeah. And boy, you like the rate that it's successful, right? Then as we move towards the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I think that's the next one slated to come online. Is that true?
Correct. So there's Johnson & Johnson's. I applied for their emergency use authorization from the FDA. AstraZeneca also has a vaccination. I don't believe they've actually applied yet, but they're getting close. I think they have pretty good data with it. Both of those are more traditional type vaccines in the sense that we have a number of other vaccines that are made with the same technology already that we've been using. They basically take a common cold virus, they inactivate it, they attach the spike protein to that virus, and then they inject it in your body. And so your body recognizes that spike protein as being foreign material and attacks it and builds immunity. Wow. So it works differently, but also very effective. Both of those are in the neighborhood of mid 80% effective in preventing severe COVID infection. The Johnson & Johnson is a single dose right now, is I believe how they've applied it.
Right.
The AstraZeneca is probably a 2-dose vaccination.
Just like the first two.
Yeah, just like the first two.
Help us understand, because you've said some things that prompt some questions. When we hear 95% effective, 85% effective, is that effective after we take the vaccine that I won't get COVID-19 or that I won't have serious side effects if I get it? The two different things.
Sure. Well, it's not side effects. It's the fact that you have. It's highly effective against getting serious infection.
Okay.
So just like our flu vaccine, it's common for people to catch the flu after having had the vaccine, right? That happens year in, year out. But generally speaking, if you do, you're still going to have a much milder infection than you would have had you not had the vaccination.
Not had the vaccine.
Same thing applies here, where we're looking at preventing severe disease. If people get just a cold from it, most people are going to be fine with that.
Yeah. Do you, as people wait and see these other two about to come online, let's say a month from now, all four of them are online. I don't know if that's going to be the case. And you had a choice. Would you just say, hey, whichever one you can get, go get? That would be your encouragement for them?
I would. Obviously the goal is to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. Right. And so what I tell my patients when they call, they're wanting to know if we're going to have it in our office, if I can get it from this county or that county. We generally tell them, get whichever one you can get as soon as you can get it.
As quick as you can get it.
Yeah.
All right.
The goal is to kind of get back to normal life here sometime soon.
Right. So good news, vaccine, the overall infection rates are down. Pete, we're doing better with it. Probably medical treatment as we get more and more knowledge on how to treat people who do go into the hospital. We're getting better at it. We've got the vaccines on the way. There's also been a lot of conversation from a lot of people that I've talked to over the last year, where they read something, see something based on taking supplements, boosting your immune system. That's a great thing, right? We all want that. So kind of give me your thoughts. Some people say, well, you want to definitely take D or zinc or C and this and that. Just kind of talk to us, at least, first of all, as it relates to COVID-19, coronavirus. Are there some supplements that really seem to help you either fight it off or minimize the symptoms of it? But then beyond that, just in general, what should we be considering to eat and take?
Sure. So most commonly you see people talking about vitamin D and zinc.
Yeah.
It's probably the ones I get the most questions about. There are marginal, positive information coming out of the literature to show benefits with coronavirus. Not necessarily that they will actually protect you from it or that they can cause your body to attack the virus better or anything like that. But they both generally help the immune system. So if you're benefiting your immune system, you're going to have a better chance of fighting the virus off and not getting sick. Yeah. Vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, folic acid, iron, selenium, they all help your immune system.
Right.
Generally, a lot of people are out there taking all kinds of supplements, varying amounts. We have to be careful with some of these things. Some of them are actually fat-soluble vitamins, and if you take too much of them as a supplement, you can actually store them and you can get too much of it. Vitamin D is a common one we'll see where patients are taking large amounts because they've heard it's good for them, and they come in with side effects because they've got too much of it and their body stored it.
There's a lot of conversation about how much vitamin D you should be taking.
Sure.
And the other question around vitamin D that I hear some people say is, when it relates to vitamin D, should you take the gel or the powder or the tablet?
Or the liquid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great question, and I don't know that I know the answer to that question.
Right.
There are different forms of vitamin D that will absorb a little better than others. I haven't looked specifically at literature to show that one is significantly better than the other. The best way to get vitamin D is to get about 20 minutes of sun exposure on your arms and legs every day out in the sunshine.
Right.
However, most of us spend our day underneath fluorescent lights, which don't help. Or when we go out in the sunshine, we lather on the 70 sunblock like the dermatologist told us, and we don't get it there either.
Right.
So, I prefer to recommend to people try to get most of their vitamins and minerals through their diet and the foods they eat, by eating just a well-balanced diet with a variety of foods, rather than trying to take a bunch of supplements to do that for them.
Exactly.
Like vitamin C, you can eat citrus fruits, bell peppers, spinach, kale, broccoli are good for that. Your nuts and seeds are good for picking up some vitamin E. Vitamin A, you can think of like your orange stuff, so your carrots, your sweet potatoes, but also your like dark leafy green vegetables are good. Vitamin D, fortified in your milk if you drink milk. Salmon, tuna has it. That one's a little bit more difficult sometimes to pick up in your diet.
Okay.
And so sometimes, that's probably the one that's a little bit more reasonable. Certainly, I would recommend people talk to their doctor about how much, they should be taking or have it monitored. Then, folic acid you can get from beans and lentils and avocados. Times it's fortified in your pasta and your bread. Iron, your meats, obviously, beans, broccoli. Selenium's in seafood, meat, poultry, cottage cheese.
Yeah.
Zinc is found in oysters and yogurt. Chickpeas are a good source of zinc. So those are just some things that you can try to incorporate a variety of in your diet to help boost your immune system.
Got it. You did mention Bluebell ice cream or Oreos. Is that?
I've not seen that,
Okay.
but chances are there's one of those things added to your Oreos.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. I love that. Here's another thing, and going back to the coronavirus, the idea of blood type. There are a lot of people, and we're going to get to antibodies next. Is what I'd like to ask you about blood type. There's a lot of conversation. Are there certain blood types that seem to handle this virus well, as opposed to other viruses? Some blood types that don't do as well. What is that?
Yeah, that's a common question we've gotten quite a bit over the last year. There was a study early on in the summer from Henry Ford Hospital that a couple thousand people that did show that people with type A positive blood might be at a little increased risk of having a more significant infection or higher risk of infection with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. O negative blood maybe showed to be not protective, but less risk. A couple subsequent studies from that where they were trying to actually design studies to look at that didn't necessarily support that claim or argument. The thought was maybe that there are not enough people really to power the study well. But then in November, in the Annals of Internal Medicine, there was a study that came out that looked a couple 100,000 people and did show that there may be some correlation with type A blood and being a little bit more susceptible, type O blood maybe being a little bit less susceptible. I'm O negative. I wasn't running around out there trying to put myself at risk.
Yeah. Well, I'm A positive.
Despite that.
Okay, got it. So A positive maybe, but the reality of it is none of us want it, right?
Correct.
None of us want it. As we roll out of blood type into antibodies, okay, let's talk to us as best you know or we know right now, because we won't know all of this for several years down the road. But as best case you can tell, or as the most recent data might tell you, if someone's had COVID-19, that how long will their antibodies last? I'm sure it's different for every person, but kind of if they've actually had the virus.
It is different for every person, and there was some concern earlier on, especially because other coronaviruses that are out there that cause a common cold. You've had a cold more than once. You don't seem to maintain immunity to that cold after you've had it the first time. Okay. What we're seeing, it looks like majority of people, probably at least 6 to 8 months, they maintain adequate antibodies to protect them. There's been a few cases of people getting reinfected. They're isolated. The incidences are a little more peculiar incidents when they occurred. So we're not seeing a significant number of patients that have had the virus that within that 6 to 8 month time frame are going out and being able to get it again.
Okay, good. Another question related to the antibodies. Let's say that someone has there any studies or any differences? Let's say that someone watching this podcast back last May, June, July had COVID-19, had coronavirus, and had mild symptoms, and someone else had very severe symptoms. Is the antibody rate any different?
Might be.
Okay.
So there is some information that shows that people that have milder disease may not have as brisk of an immune response to it, and therefore they may not build antibody levels as high when they have it, and potentially don't keep the antibodies as long.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure that's all going to be information in the future. Okay, so that's if they actually had the virus. Give us your best thoughts, or what they think might be the best thoughts if and when we get a vaccine. Okay. That how long will those antibodies last? How long will that last? Do you know?
I don't know that we know because they started doing the studies last summer. So the people that we're checking from last summer, we only have 9 months or so worth of data. Right. So we don't really know. Now we think that the virus, the immunity to those vaccinations will be long lasting. Based on the type of immune response that they see, both in producing antibodies as well as other immune-fighting cells called T cells that also help attack the virus. So we think that that's going to provide people with long-term immunity.
Good.
But certainly, until we have long-term data. We don't know that for
We
sure.
don't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick question. If someone's exposed, there are multiple different tests out there. I have people talk to me about getting the quick test or whatever. Talk to us quickly about the kind of tests that are out on the market, and if we do have a choice, like you said with the vaccine, take what you want. You would tell your patients, take whichever vaccine you can get fastest. If someone thinks they've been exposed or has been exposed or has some sort of symptoms and they want to take a test to see if they have COVID-19, to see if they have coronavirus, what kind of tests are out there? Which do you prefer?
Well, the gold standard would be a PCR test, and that would be the preference.
Okay.
Those aren't always readily available or rapidly available for results. So you have a PCR test like you send to a lab. You have the rapid PCR like the Abbott ID Now, which is one that was big in the news when the testing was first kind of being developed and everything. And then you have antigen tests, and there's a whole bunch of different antigen tests. The antigens check for a protein on the virus to see if that's in your bloodstream. So it takes a higher number of virus count in your blood, in your saliva, to be able to detect that. The PCR test, it's checking for genetic material related to the virus in your system. So it basically detects it, amplifies it, and then is able to measure it and detect the virus. So you can do that with smaller numbers of viral particles in your mucous membranes and such. So it's a little more sensitive test. So depending on how many days it's been since you started your symptoms or got exposed, would determine how accurate the test can be. The most accurate tests are the ones that we actually send to the lab. They can detect a much smaller number of viruses present to determine a positive than what even the Abbott rapid test can do.
Oh, cool.
So,
all right, now maybe last question, then we'll circle back to some other things if you would like to go back and address something. Mask. Kind of give me your thoughts on mask. As a pastor of a church, we've got a lot of people in different ways, that think differently about the mask, just like people think differently about vaccines, all of that good stuff. Kind of give me your doctor's perspective on a mask. Are you pro-mask?
Sure.
Okay.
I would say I'm pro-mask, yes.
Yeah.
I think we have to use some common sense with this.
Yeah.
If I'm wearing an N95 and you're wearing a cloth mask, I've got better protection than you do.
Okay.
But for the general public, I think wearing a mask, it does help stop respiratory particles from, spreading away from your nose and mouth if you cough, sneeze, even with breathing. So the respiratory particles, droplets, are what generally is carrying the virus. And so if we can diminish the number of virus-carrying respiratory droplets that are floating away from a person when they cough or sneeze, when they're in public around other people, then we can diminish the risk of transmission. If you're wearing a mask and you're breathing through it, you're also less likely to breathe those respiratory droplets containing the virus into your system. So I think general common sense says that they can be helpful. Right. I don't like to have the argument about, well, it can't stop a virus.
Right.
Correct. A cloth mask is not going to stop that tiny little microns virus.
Right.
But it can stop the respiratory droplets in a large sense. And so I think from that standpoint and from just protecting the community as a whole, I think we owe it to one another to try and protect each other.
Okay. So you say wear the mask for others. But, because you mentioned that the mask isn't going to stop the virus, but there is a reality if we capture some of the particles that leave our mouth and we don't leave them at the grocery store or Home Depot or wherever we happen to be, we're actually helping everybody else, right? So
correct. Yes. I wear a mask in my clinic, not because I'm worried about me and that I might get something from another patient, but I don't want to give it to any of my patients either. If on the off chance that I was exposed and I'm asymptomatic, I don't want to get one of my patients sick. And so
Right.
we're very careful about that. And I think if the general population kind of takes the best interest of other people,
Right.
and keeps that in mind, I think we can get through this a lot easier.
All right, very good. So, in conclusion, just seems to be infection rates going down. You would say, man, in theory, and you're a doctor, and I respect you, and I've called you about a lot of things over the years, that you would say, if you have access to a vaccine, take it, regardless of which one it is.
I agree. Yeah, I think so, especially if you're high risk.
Right.
If you're a person that's got high blood pressure, heart disease, asthma, COPD, some kind of immune compromise, get the vaccine.
Right.
We know what the statistics say as far as, the older, sicker patients have a rougher time with this. Younger, healthier patients, shrug it off like it's a cold. But we've seen the exact opposite on occasion. We see the older guy that doesn't have any problems with it, and we've seen the 50-year-old guy struggle and end up in the ICU.
That's right.
So, we can all protect ourselves and protect each other if we do the vaccine, wear the mask, those kinds of things.
Right. Any final thoughts as you think, and just someone's leaning in, listening to this podcast? What would be your final thoughts?
I mean, I would just tell people to try and be patient. It's been rough. I think the impact on society, socially, with all of the social distancing and working from home and wearing masks and not getting together with people on the holidays and those kinds of things. I think it's been really difficult on people. Mm-hmm. I see, that's probably been as much of a struggle that I talk to my patients about as the virus itself. Is just the frustration with that, and I think we're getting close to turning a corner. It just feels like it. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't have numbers to prove that, but I think we're turning a corner, and I think if people can just be patient, I think we can kind of start getting back to some normalcy before too long.
Well, you just kind of led me in another question. I'm gonna go ahead and ask one more, because as a pastor, I can tell you that I've seen it. The idea of isolation, the social isolation, depression, some anxiety, just with what's going on in the world. I'm looking forward to us turning the corner. But let's just say someone's watching in and they are struggling a little bit with social anxiety, their isolation, the worry. Got any thoughts for them as we wait for this moment when we turn the corner?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, FaceTime. FaceTime with your grandkids, FaceTime with your family. It's seeing their faces, I think, is helpful. Talk to them as much as you can. Right. If it's getting to be more significant than that, talk to your primary care doctor about it. Consider talking to a counselor about it. Counseling has been the area of healthcare that has benefited greatly from telemedicine,
right.
Because since they don't need to listen to your heart and lungs, I think it's made availability of counselors it's improved significally. So find a good Christian counselor that you can talk to kind of help you work through it all. I have a lot of my older patients that they're like, we've waited for the golden years so we could spend time with our grandkids and stuff, and now our kids won't bring their grandkids over because they're afraid they're going to give us the virus, and that'll be it.
Yep.
And it's been a real struggle. So I tell people, talk to people about it. Yeah. Talk to somebody.
Well, thanks, Doc. Appreciate it, man. You've been
You're
a friend
welcome.
over the years, friend of this church, and just excited about just all that you do to help people, and even your new practice and the way you're doing the practice, just because you care about people. But until then, thanks for joining us joining in with us, and man, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.